The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Wyoming Territory, 1874, as Clara Bennett dropped to her knees beside her husband's lifeless body. Blood seeped into the parched earth, turning the dust crimson as tears streamed down her dirt-smudged face. The stagecoach robbers had vanished over the ridge, leaving her alone with nothing but grief and the vast, unforgiving wilderness stretching in every direction. "Thomas," she whispered, pressing her trembling fingers against his chest, feeling for a heartbeat that would never return. "Please, not like this." For 3 days, Clara dug into the hard ground with nothing but her bare hands and a small shovel from their wagon. Each strike of metal against earth felt like a knife in her heart. When she finally laid Thomas to rest beneath a lone cottonwood tree, she collapsed beside the fresh mound of dirt, her body racked with sobs until exhaustion claimed her. Clara awoke to the soft nickering of their remaining horse. The other had been stolen by the bandits, along with most of their supplies and the money they'd saved to start their new life. Rising on shaky legs, she surveyed what remained. A damaged wagon with one wheel barely hanging on, a skittish horse, meager supplies, and a husband's grave. "What now, Thomas?" she whispered to the wind. No answer came except the rustling of leaves overhead. With trembling hands, she hitched the horse to the wagon and set her course westward, toward the settlement of Pine Creek. Thomas had spoken of it often, a growing town where they'd planned to open a small store. Now, she headed there alone, her dreams as broken as the wagon she drove. The journey was arduous. Clara rationed her dwindling supplies, ate berries she recognized from her childhood in Tennessee, and drank from streams when she could find them. Each night she slept beneath the wagon, clutching Thomas's pistol against her chest, jumping at every sound in the darkness. On the 6th day, as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, the damaged wheel finally gave way with a splintering crack. The wagon lurched violently, throwing Clara to the ground. She landed hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. When she finally managed to stand, she saw the axle had broken completely, the wheel lying useless in the dirt. "No, no, no," she muttered, circling the wagon with increasing panic. This couldn't happen, not now, not here in the middle of nowhere with Pine Creek still days away. Clara sank to the ground, burying her face in her hands. For the first time since Thomas's death, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her despair. She had no home, no husband, no future, just a broken wagon in a vast wilderness that cared nothing for her suffering. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Clara heard the distant sound of hoofbeats. Her hand instinctively reached for Thomas's pistol. She'd already lost everything of value except her life, and she wasn't about to surrender that too. A lone rider appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the setting sun. Clara ducked behind the wagon, pistol ready, heart hammering in her chest. The rider approached slowly, and as he drew nearer, she could make out a tall figure atop a muscular chestnut stallion. "Hello, the wagon." The man's voice carried across the distance, deep and resonant. "Anyone there need assistance?" Clara remained silent, finger hovering over the trigger. "I mean no harm," the stranger called again. "Saw your wagon from the ridge, thought you might need help." After a moment's hesitation, Clara stepped out from behind the wagon, pistol still gripped tightly in her hand. "That's close enough," she called, her voice steadier than she felt. The rider stopped immediately, raising both hands to show he was unarmed. "Madam," he said with a slight nod. "Appears you've had some trouble." Clara took in the man before her, tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer sky. His clothes were dusty from the trail, but well-kept denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a weathered leather vest. A cowboy by the looks of him, with a worn Stetson pushed back on his head. "What's your business here?" Clara demanded, keeping the pistol trained on him. "Just passing through," he replied calmly. "Name's August McCall. Most folks call me Gus. I'm headed to Pine Creek." "Saw your wagon wheels given out." "Pine Creek." Clara lowered the pistol slightly. "That's where I'm headed to." August dismounted slowly, keeping his movements deliberate. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the broken wheel. Clara nodded reluctantly, stepping back but keeping the pistol ready. He knelt beside the damaged axle, examining it with careful hands. "This is beyond repair out here," he said finally, looking up at her. "You'd need a proper wheelwright to fix this." "I don't have the means for that," Clara admitted, the weight of her situation crushing down on her once more. August straightened, dusting off his hands. Pine Creek's still a good 2 days' ride from here. He glanced at her meager supplies, then back at her face. "If you don't mind my asking, are you traveling alone, madam?" Clara stiffened, raising the pistol again. "What concern is that of yours?" August raised his hands again. "Just worried for your safety, madam. These parts ain't kind to lone travelers, especially," he stopped himself. "Especially women," Clara finished for him, a hard edge to her voice. He had the decency to look abashed. "I meant no offense, it's just... there are dangers out here that don't discriminate, but some that do." Clara's arm trembled slightly from the effort of holding the pistol steady. "I've already met some of those dangers," she said quietly. "My husband was shot dead by stagecoach robbers a week ago. I buried him myself." August's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "I'm truly sorry for your loss, madam, Clara," she said after a moment. "Clara Bennett, Mrs. Bennett," he acknowledged with a respectful nod. "I can offer to escort you to Pine Creek if you'll accept the help. We can load what supplies you need onto my horse. He's strong enough to carry them, and you too, if need be." Clara studied him carefully. Every instinct warned her against trusting a stranger, but what choice did she have? She was stranded with limited supplies and no means of transportation. If she refused his help, she might not survive the journey alone. "Why would you help me?" she asked bluntly. "What do you expect in return?" August's expression remained steady. "Nothing, madam. My pa raised me to never leave someone in need if I had the means to help, especially not out here." After a long moment, Clara lowered the pistol. "Very well, Mr. McCall. I accept your offer." They worked together as the last light faded from the sky, transferring Clara's essential belongings to August's horse. She took only what she couldn't bear to leave: some clothing, a small box of keepsakes, Thomas's pistol, and their dwindling supplies. Everything else, furniture they'd brought from Tennessee, Thomas's books, kitchen items she'd carefully packed, had to be abandoned. Clara stroked the weathered wood of the wagon one last time. It had carried them from Tennessee, across rivers and mountains, bearing their hopes and dreams for a new life. Now it would remain here, slowly reclaimed by the wilderness. "Ready?" August asked gently, holding the reins of his horse. Clara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "You can ride," August offered. "I'll walk alongside." "We'll share the burden," Clara insisted. "We'll both walk, and your horse can carry the supplies. I won't be treated as another burden to be carried." A small smile touched August's lips. "As you wish, Mrs. Bennett." They traveled until the moon was high overhead, then made camp in a small clearing sheltered by trees. August built a fire while Clara organized their supplies. They worked in companionable silence, each respecting the other's space. Over a simple meal of jerky and hardtack, August finally broke the silence. "If you don't mind my asking, what were you and your husband planning in Pine Creek?" Clara stared into the flames. "Thomas was a shopkeeper back in Tennessee. We were going to open a general store in Pine Creek. He'd heard it was growing, that there were opportunities there." She gave a bitter laugh. "He was always chasing opportunities." "It is growing," August confirmed. "I've been through a few times in the past year. New buildings going up every month, it seems." "And you?" Clara asked. "What draws you to Pine Creek?" August poked at the fire with a stick. "Work, mainly. I'm a ranch hand by trade, but I do odd jobs when needed. Heard the Wallace Ranch outside Pine Creek was hiring. Thought I'd try my luck there." Clara studied him across the fire. In the flickering light, she could see the lines etched around his eyes, not from age, as he couldn't be much past 30, but from years squinting against the sun and wind. His hands were calloused and strong, his shoulders broad from hard work. There was an easy confidence to him, but no arrogance. "How long have you been riding the range?" she asked. "Since I was 15, he replied. "Left home in Missouri after my ma died. Pa had passed years before, worked my way west, ranch to ranch, never stayed in one place too long." "No family waiting for you somewhere?" August shook his head. "No, madam, just me and Samson here." He patted his horse's flank affectionately. They fell into silence again, each lost in their own thoughts as the fire crackled between them. Clara found herself studying August when he wasn't looking, wondering about the life that had shaped him. There was a gentleness to him that seemed at odds with his rugged exterior, a thoughtfulness in his blue eyes that spoke of depth beyond the typical drifter. When it came time to sleep, August insisted Clara take his bedroll while he made do with his saddle blanket. "I've slept on worse," he assured her when she protested. "Many a night under the stars with nothing but my saddle for a pillow." Clara reluctantly agreed, but sleep eluded her. She lay awake, listening to the night sounds, the soft whisper of the wind through the trees, the occasional hoot of an owl, the steady breathing of August across the dying fire. For the first time since Thomas's death, she didn't feel entirely alone, and the realization brought both comfort and guilt. Morning came with a gentle mist hanging over the land. They ate a quick breakfast and resumed their journey, walking side by side with Samson following obediently behind. As they traveled, August pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his travels across the West. Clara found herself smiling at his tales, momentarily distracted from her grief. By midday, dark clouds had gathered on the horizon, and a cool wind swept across the plains. "Storm's coming," August observed, eyeing the sky. "We should find shelter before it hits." They quickened their pace, but the storm moved faster. Within an hour, the first heavy drops began to fall, quickly turning into a downpour that soaked them to the skin. Thunder rolled across the sky and lightning flashed, illuminating the landscape in stark white bursts. "There," August shouted over the din, pointing to a rocky outcropping ahead. "We can take shelter there." They ran the remaining distance, leading Samson behind them. The outcropping formed a shallow cave, just deep enough to provide protection from the rain. August hurriedly unloaded their supplies while Clara led Samson into the shelter. Dripping wet and shivering, they huddled in the small space. August attempted to start a fire with what dry wood they could find within the cave, but with little success. "You're freezing," he noted, concern evident in his voice as he watched Clara tremble. "I'm fine," she insisted through chattering teeth. Without a word, August removed his leather vest and then his wool coat, which had been somewhat protected by the vest. He handed the coat to Clara. "Put this on. It's still mostly dry inside." Clara hesitated, then accepted the coat with a grateful nod. It enveloped her completely, still warm from his body heat. The scent of leather, horse, and something distinctly masculine, pine and sun-warmed earth surrounded her. "What about you?" she asked, noting he was left in just his damp shirt. "I've weathered worse," he assured her with a small smile. "Besides, I've got more meat on my bones than you do." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the storm rage outside. As Clara's shivering subsided, she found herself studying August again. Water dripped from his dark hair onto his shoulders, and his blue shirt clung to his muscular frame. Despite his assurances, she could see him fighting against his own shivers. "Tell me about Tennessee," he said suddenly, drawing her from her thoughts. "I've never been east of the Mississippi." Grateful for the distraction, Clara began to describe her childhood home, the rolling hills, the dense forests, the way the mist clung to the mountains in the early morning. She told him about her father's small farm, about learning to preserve fruits and vegetables with her mother, about the community dances where she'd first met Thomas. He was passing through with his family, she recalled, a distant smile on her lips. "They stopped in our town to resupply on their way to Memphis. There was a dance that night, and Thomas asked me to join him. He was so different from the local boys, well-read, full of stories about places I'd only dreamed of visiting. When he left the next day, I thought I'd never see him again." "But he came back," August guessed softly. Clara nodded. "6 months later, said he couldn't stop thinking about me. We were married within a year." She twisted the gold band on her finger. "He was always restless, always looking toward the horizon. When he heard about the opportunities out west, nothing would do but for us to pack up and go." "Did you want to come west?" August asked. The question caught Clara off guard. No one had ever asked her that before, not even Thomas. She began, then faltered. "I wanted Thomas to be happy. He believed our future was out here." August said nothing, but his eyes held understanding. Outside, the storm continued to rage, lightning occasionally illuminating the small cave in harsh white flashes. "I'm sorry," Clara said after a while. "I'm sure you didn't intend to hear my life story." "Don't apologize," August replied gently. "Sometimes it helps to talk about the ones we've lost, keeps their memory alive." Clara studied him curiously. "You speak like someone who knows loss well." August's gaze turned distant. "Everyone out here has lost something, Mrs. Bennett." "It's the nature of this life." "Clara," she corrected him softly. "Please call me Clara." Their eyes met across the small space, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Two solitary figures brought together by circumstance, each carrying their own burdens, their own losses. The storm raged throughout the afternoon and into the evening, forcing them to spend the night in the cramped shelter. August insisted Clara take the only relatively dry spot, while he made himself as comfortable as possible near the entrance, keeping watch as she slept. Clara dreamed of Thomas that night, not of his death, but of their early days together in Tennessee, of his laugh and the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. She woke with tears on her cheeks, the ache of loss fresh in her heart. In the gray light of dawn, she found August already awake, tending to Samson. The storm had passed, leaving behind a washed, clean world glistening with raindrops. "Morning," he greeted her, his voice rough with fatigue. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, evidence of his sleepless night. "How did you rest?" "Better than you, it seems," Clara replied, concern coloring her voice. "Did you sleep at all?" August shrugged. "Enough, we should get moving. The trail will be muddy, but if we're lucky, we can reach Pine Creek by nightfall." They resumed their journey, progress slowed by the muddy terrain. Clara noted how August occasionally stumbled with fatigue but caught himself quickly each time. Despite her offers to rest, he insisted on pushing forward. "The sooner we reach Pine Creek, the sooner you can start rebuilding," he said simply. By midday, the sun had dried much of the mud, making their travel easier. As they crested a hill, August pointed to a distant cluster of buildings nestled in a valley. "Pine Creek," he announced. "We'll be there in a few hours." Clara's heart quickened at the sight. This was to have been their new beginning, hers and Thomas's. Now it would be just her beginning, alone in a town where she knew no one. As if reading her thoughts, August spoke quietly beside her. "It's a good town, Clara. Decent folk for the most part, they'll help you get settled." "And you?" she asked, surprising herself with the question. "Will you stay?" August's gaze remained fixed on the distant town. "For a while, if the Wallace Ranch has work, then we'll see." They continued their journey in thoughtful silence. As they drew closer to Pine Creek, details of the town became clearer. A main street lined with wooden buildings, a church steeple rising above the rest, people moving about their business like tiny figures in a diorama. Clara's steps slowed as they approached the outskirts of town. The reality of her situation pressed down upon her, a widow with almost nothing to her name, entering a strange town with no friends, no family, no husband to stand beside her. "I'm afraid," she admitted in a whisper, stopping in her tracks. August halted beside her, his expression gentle. "Of what?" "Everything," Clara confessed, her voice breaking. "What if I can't do this? What if I can't make a life here without Thomas? I don't even have enough money to start the store now. The robbers took most of our savings." August was quiet for a moment, considering her words. "When I was 16, he began slowly, "I got caught in a blizzard in the mountains of Colorado, lost my horse, lost my way. Thought for sure I was going to die out there, but I remembered what my pa always said: you can only take one step at a time, son, no matter how long the journey." He looked at her directly. "You don't have to figure it all out today, Clara. Just take the first step." His words settled over her like a warm blanket. Clara took a deep breath, then nodded. "One step at a time," she repeated. "And you don't have to take them alone," August added quietly. "At least not today." With renewed resolve, Clara continued toward Pine Creek, August walking steadily beside her. As they entered the town proper, curious glances were cast their way: a mud-splattered woman and a trail-worn cowboy leading a loaded horse down the main street made for an unusual sight. August guided them toward a modest two-story building with a sign declaring it the Pine Creek Hotel and Boarding House. Outside, a plump woman in an apron was sweeping the porch. She looked up as they approached, her eyes widening slightly. "Afternoon, madam," August called politely, removing his hat. "Would you happen to have a room available for the lady? She's just arrived in town." The woman's gaze shifted between them, curiosity evident in her expression. "Indeed we do," she replied, her voice warm and tinged with a slight southern accent. "I'm Agnes Miller. My husband and I run the boarding house." "Clara Bennett," Clara introduced herself, stepping forward. I was hoping to settle in Pine Creek." "She's had a difficult journey," August explained gently. "Lost her husband on the trail, needs a safe place to stay while she gets her bearings." Agnes's expression immediately softened with sympathy. "Oh, you poor dear, of course we have room. Come in, come in." She ushered Clara toward the door, then paused to look back at August. "And you, sir, will you be needing a room as well?" August shook his head. "No, madam. I'll be heading out to the Wallace Ranch to inquire about work, but I'd be obliged if you could help Mrs. Bennett get settled." "Of course," Agnes assured him. "We'll take good care of her." Clara turned to August, suddenly reluctant to part ways with the man who had become her protector and guide these past 2 days. "Mr. McCall, August, I don't know how to thank you." August shifted uncomfortably under her gratitude. "No thanks needed, Mrs. Bennett. I'm just glad we crossed paths when we did." "At least let me pay you for your trouble," Clara insisted, reaching for the small pouch where she kept what little money the robbers hadn't taken. August held up a hand to stop her. "Keep your money. You'll need it more than I will." His expression softened. Besides, it was no trouble, none at all. Their eyes met and held, and Clara felt something stir within her, a warmth she hadn't expected to feel again. "Will I see you again?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. A small smile touched August's lips. "Pine Creek's not so big a town that we won't cross paths. Good day, Mrs. Bennett. Mrs. Miller." With a tip of his hat, he turned and led Sampson away, heading back down the main street toward the livery stable. Clara watched him go, a curious emptiness settling in her chest as his figure grew smaller in the distance. "He seems a fine man," Agnes observed beside her. "Not many would go out of their way to help a stranger in need." "Yes," Clara agreed softly. "A fine man indeed." Inside the boarding house, Agnes showed Clara to a clean, modest room on the second floor. After 2 weeks on the trail and a night in a cave, the simple bed with its crisp white sheets looked like luxury itself. "The washroom is down the hall," Agnes explained. "Dinner's at 6 in the dining room. My husband Robert and I live on the first floor if you need anything." She hesitated, then added kindly, "I'm truly sorry about your husband, Mrs. Bennett. If there's anything we can do to help you settle in Pine Creek, you need only ask." Left alone, Clara sank onto the edge of the bed, the events of the past 2 weeks crashing over her like a wave. Thomas was gone. Their dream of a store in Pine Creek seemed impossible now. She was alone in a strange town with limited funds and no clear path forward, and yet, she was alive. She had made it to Pine Creek against all odds, thanks largely to August McCall, a stranger who had asked for nothing in return for his kindness. Perhaps that was a sign that she could find her way here, that all was not lost. With that thought holding back the tide of despair, Clara began to unpack the few belongings she had salvaged from the wagon. The following days passed in a blur as Clara oriented herself to Pine Creek. Agnes and Robert Miller proved to be kind hosts, introducing her to other townsfolk and helping her understand the lay of the land. Pine Creek was indeed a growing settlement, with a main street boasting a general store, a bank, a saloon, a small church, and various other businesses. New buildings were under construction at the edge of town, evidence of its expansion. Clara inquired about work and discovered that the general store owner, Mr. Harrison, was looking for help. With her experience from working in Thomas's store back in Tennessee, she secured a position almost immediately. "It's not much pay," Mr. Harrison warned her, a thin man with spectacles perched on his nose. "But it's steady work." "That's all I ask," Clara assured him, grateful for the opportunity. The work was familiar and comforting, ordering inventory, arranging displays, helping customers find what they needed. It kept her hands and mind busy during the day, though the nights in her small boarding house room were still filled with grief and memories of Thomas. A week passed, then two, with no sign of August. Clara found herself watching the street from the store window, hoping to catch a glimpse of him riding into town. She told herself it was merely curiosity wanting to know if he'd found work at the Wallace Ranch, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. In the brief time they'd traveled together, he had become important to her in a way she couldn't quite define. It was nearly 3 weeks after her arrival in Pine Creek when the bell above the store door jingled and August McCall stepped inside. Clara's heart leaped at the sight of him, though she quickly schooled her features into a more composed expression. "Mr. McCall," she greeted him from behind the counter. What a pleasant surprise. August removed his hat, revealing hair that had been recently trimmed. His clothes were clean, his face freshly shaved. He looked different from the trail-worn cowboy who had rescued her, yet his blue eyes were the same clear and direct as they met hers. "Mrs. Bennett," he replied with a nod. "I see you found employment." "Mr. Harrison was kind enough to hire me," she confirmed. "And you?" "Did you find work at the Wallace Ranch?" August nodded. "Been breaking horses for them these past weeks. Mr. Wallace seems satisfied with my work so far." They fell into an awkward silence, each studying the other across the expanse of the store. "Is there something I can help you find?" Clara finally asked, gesturing to the shelves around them. August seemed to remember himself. "Yes, actually, I need some supplies." He listed off several items: tobacco, coffee, ammunition, a new shirt, and Clara moved around the store gathering them. As she wrapped his purchases in brown paper, she ventured, "How long do you plan to stay in Pine Creek?" August considered the question. "Mr. Wallace has offered me steady work if I want it. I'm considering staying on at least through winter." He paused, then added, "And you? Are you settling in well?" Clara secured his package with twine before answering. "As well as can be expected. The Millers have been very kind. The work here helps keep my mind occupied." She hesitated, then admitted, "I'm still trying to figure out what comes next. The general store Thomas and I planned. That dream died with him, I'm afraid." August's expression softened. "Dreams can change, Clara. New ones can take root given time." Their eyes met again, and Clara felt that same warmth stirring within her. There was something in his gaze, a gentleness, an understanding that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time, perhaps ever. "I hope you're right," she said softly. August paid for his purchases and turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I was wondering," he said, his back still to her, "if you might consider joining me for supper at the hotel restaurant this Sunday. That is, if you're not otherwise engaged." Clara's heart fluttered in her chest, surprise and something like joy coursing through her. Then, just as quickly, guilt followed. Thomas had been dead barely a month. What kind of wife was she to feel such things for another man so soon? August must have sensed her hesitation, for he turned back to face her. "Just as friends," he clarified quickly. "I thought you might appreciate some company. It can be lonely, being new in town." Clara's relief was mingled with a curious disappointment. "Yes," she agreed, pushing aside her conflicted emotions. "Yes, I would like that, thank you." A small smile touched August's lips. "Sunday at 6 then." "Sunday at 6, she confirmed. After he left, Clara found herself distracted for the remainder of the day, her thoughts repeatedly drifting to August and their upcoming dinner. It was foolish, she knew, to be so affected by a simple invitation to a friendly meal. Yet she couldn't deny the anticipation that bubbled within her, bringing a lightness she hadn't felt since before Thomas's death. That evening, as she helped Agnes set the table for the boarding house dinner, Clara found herself confiding in the older woman about August's invitation. "It's just dinner," she hastened to add. "As friends, he knows I'm recently widowed." Agnes's kind eyes studied Clara's face. "It's natural to seek companionship, dear. Grief is a lonely journey." "But it's only been a month," Clara said, voicing her guilt. "Thomas and I were married for 5 years. How can I even think of enjoying another man's company so soon?" Agnes placed a gentle hand on Clara's arm. "The heart doesn't follow a timetable, my dear, and enjoying a meal with a friend doesn't dishonor your husband's memory." She paused, then added softly, "Thomas would want you to live, Clara, to find moments of joy where you can." Clara wasn't entirely convinced, but Agnes's words did ease some of her guilt. By Sunday, she had decided to allow herself this one evening of companionship without judgment or reproach. She dressed with care in her best dress, a dark blue cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. It was one of the few nice garments she'd managed to save from the wagon. After pinning her hair into a simple but elegant style, she studied her reflection in the small mirror. Grief had left its mark. Her face was thinner. Shadows lingered beneath her eyes, but there was color in her cheeks today, a brightness in her gaze that had been absent for weeks. August was waiting for her in the hotel lobby, dressed in clean clothes with his hair neatly combed. He stood when she appeared, his eyes widening slightly as they took in her appearance. "Mrs. Bennett," he greeted her, his voice warm. "You look lovely." "Thank you," Clara replied, a blush heating her cheeks. "And please call me Clara. After all we've been through, formality seems unnecessary." "Clara," he agreed with a smile. "Shall we?" He offered his arm, and after a moment's hesitation, she placed her hand upon it. The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in Pine Creek, which wasn't saying much, but they had made an effort with white tablecloths and candles on each table. August guided Clara to a table near the window, pulling out her chair with old-fashioned courtesy. Conversation flowed more easily than Clara had expected. August told her about growing up in Missouri, about his father who had been a blacksmith and his mother who had taught in a one-room schoolhouse. He spoke of his years on the trail, the ranches where he'd worked, the sights he'd seen across the West. In turn, Clara shared more about her life in Tennessee, her childhood on her father's farm, the small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. She even found herself able to speak of Thomas without the sharp pain that usually accompanied his memory, telling August about his intelligence, his dreams, the wanderlust that had eventually led them west. "He sounds like he was a good man," August observed quietly. "He was," Clara agreed, a sad smile touching her lips. "Not perfect, he could be impulsive, and sometimes he was so focused on the future that he forgot to live in the present, but he was kind and brave and full of dreams." She twisted her wedding ring absently. "I just wish his dreams hadn't led us here, if we'd stayed in Tennessee." "You can't know what might have happened," August said gently. "Life has a way of finding us wherever we are." Clara nodded, knowing he was right. "What about you?" she asked, eager to shift the conversation. "You've never married," August shook his head. "The life I've led doesn't lend itself to putting down roots. Hard to court a woman proper when you're moving from ranch to ranch with the seasons. And now, you said Mr. Wallace offered you steady work." A thoughtful expression crossed August's face. "Now, I'm beginning to think there might be value in staying in one place for a while." Their eyes met across the table, and Clara felt a flutter in her chest. There was something in his gaze, a question, perhaps, or a possibility that both thrilled and frightened her. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of their food. As they ate, the conversation turned to lighter topics: the characters of Pine Creek, the upcoming harvest festival, August's work with the horses at the Wallace Ranch. By the time they finished dessert apple pie that wasn't nearly as good as what Clara could make herself, she realized she had laughed more that evening than in the entire month since Thomas's death. August insisted on walking her back to the boarding house, though it was just down the street. The night was clear and cool, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet sky. They walked slowly, neither seemingly in a hurry to end the evening. At the boarding house steps, Clara turned to face him. "Thank you for tonight," she said sincerely. It was nice to remember that life goes on. August's expression was soft in the moonlight. "Thank you for joining me. I've enjoyed your company very much, Clara." There was a moment, brief but electric, when Clara thought he might lean down and kiss her. Her heart raced at the possibility, a mix of anticipation and panic flooding through her. But August merely took her hand and pressed it gently before releasing it. "Good night," he said, stepping back. "Perhaps we could do this again sometime," Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. With a tip of his hat, August turned and walked away, his figure soon swallowed by the darkness of the street. Inside her room, Clara sat on the edge of her bed, her emotions in turmoil. The evening had been wonderful, far more enjoyable than she had anticipated. August was thoughtful, intelligent, and kind. She felt comfortable with him in a way she rarely felt with anyone, and yet, guilt gnawed at her. Was it a betrayal of Thomas to feel this way about another man, to look forward to seeing August again, to have momentarily wanted him to kiss her? Clara removed her wedding ring and held it in her palm, studying the simple gold band in the lamplight. "What would you have me do, Thomas?" she whispered to the empty room. No answer came, only the soft ticking of the clock on the bedside table. With a sigh, Clara slipped the ring back onto her finger. It was too soon to be thinking such thoughts, too soon to be feeling such things. She was a widow in mourning, not a young girl free to follow her heart's whims. And yet, as she prepared for bed, Clara couldn't help but replay the evening in her mind, lingering on the warmth in August's blue eyes, the gentle timbre of his laugh, the strength and gentleness of his hand when it briefly held hers. Over the following weeks, August became a regular visitor to the general store. Sometimes he came with a list of supplies for the ranch, sometimes just to pass the time in conversation when the store was quiet. Occasionally, he would bring Clara small gifts, a handful of wildflowers, a book he thought she might enjoy, fresh berries he'd picked on his ride into town. They began to take Sunday dinners together regularly at the hotel restaurant. Sometimes they would walk afterward, strolling through the quiet streets of Pine Creek, as August pointed out constellations in the night sky or shared stories of his travels. Clara found herself looking forward to these evenings with an eagerness that both delighted and dismayed her. 2 months after her arrival in Pine Creek, Clara had saved enough from her wages to rent a small cottage on the edge of town. It was nothing grand, just 2 rooms with a tiny kitchen and a porch facing west, but it was hers. The day she moved in, August arrived with a rocking chair he had purchased from the carpenter. "A housewarming gift," he explained as 2 men from the carpenter's shop positioned it on her porch. "Every home needs a proper rocking chair." Clara was touched beyond words. "August, you shouldn't have." "It's too much," he shrugged, looking pleased by her reaction. "I wanted to. Besides, I figured you'd need somewhere to sit and watch the sunset. You've got a fine view of it from this porch." That evening, after August had gone, Clara sat in her new rocking chair and watched as the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. For the first time since Thomas's death, she felt a sense of peace, of possibility. This small cottage with its squeaky floors and drafty windows was the beginning of a new chapter. As autumn settled over Pine Creek, bringing cooler temperatures and changing leaves, Clara found herself more integrated into the community. She joined the Ladies' Aid Society at the church, attended social gatherings, and even began offering baking lessons to some of the younger women in town. The grief that had been her constant companion began to ease, not disappearing but transforming into something she could carry without being crushed by its weight. And through it all, August was there, a steady, comforting presence in her life. He never pushed, never presumed, always respectful of her status as a widow still wearing her wedding ring. But Clara couldn't help noticing the way his eyes followed her, the gentle touches he sometimes allowed himself, a hand at her elbow, fingers briefly brushing hers when passing an object. There was something growing between them, unspoken but undeniable. One crisp October evening, as they sat on Clara's porch after dinner, August finally broached the subject that had hung unspoken between them for weeks. "Clara," he began, his voice unusually hesitant. "There's something I need to say, and I hope you won't think me forward for saying it." Clara's heart quickened. She had been expecting this conversation, both longing for and dreading it. "What is it, August?" He turned to face her, his expression earnest in the fading light. "These past months, getting to know you, they've been the happiest of my life. I've never met anyone like you, so strong, so full of grace even in the face of terrible loss." He paused, searching for words. "I know it hasn't been long since you lost your husband. I know you're still grieving. And I would never presume to take his place in your heart." Clara's throat tightened with emotion. "August," he raised a hand gently. "Please let me finish. I need to say this." He took a deep breath. "I've come to care for you deeply, Clara, more than I thought possible. And I hope that perhaps you might feel something for me too." Tears welled in Clara's eyes as the truth of his words resonated within her. Yes, she had come to care for him, this kind, steady man who had entered her life when she was at her lowest point and had never once made her feel like a burden. "I do," she whispered, the admission both frightening and freeing. "I do care for you, August, but I'm afraid." Afraid of what it means, afraid of betraying Thomas's memory, afraid of opening my heart only to lose someone again. August reached for her hand, holding it gently between his own. "I can't promise you won't ever know loss again, Clara. No one can promise that. But I want you to know that I'm not here to replace Thomas. I would never try to erase what you had with him or expect you to forget him." "Then what are you here for?" Clara asked softly. August's blue eyes held her steadily. "I'm here to love you if you'll let me. Not instead of him, but in addition to the love you still carry for him. I'm here to walk beside you to build something new together." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks at his words. "I've lost my husband," she said, her voice breaking. "The future we planned, the dreams we shared, they're all gone." "I know," August said softly, "and I'm not here to replace any of that, just to love you, Clara, if you'll have me." Clara looked into his eyes and saw the truth there, the depth of his feelings, the sincerity of his words. This wasn't a man looking to step into another man's shoes or erase the past. This was a man offering his heart, asking only for a chance to love her as she was, grief and all. Slowly, deliberately, Clara removed her wedding ring. She held it in her palm for a long moment, then closed her fingers around it. "I'll always love Thomas," she said quietly. "He was my first love, my husband, a good man who didn't deserve his fate." "I know," August nodded, understanding in his eyes, "but I think there's room in my heart for new love too." She looked up at him, a small smile breaking through her tears. "I think Thomas would want that for me." August's face transformed with hope. "Does that mean?" Clara leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, answering his question with a kiss. It was gentle at first, tentative, but quickly deepened as August pulled her closer. When they finally parted, both breathless, Clara felt as though something long frozen within her had begun to thaw. "I'm not ready to let go of my past entirely," she warned him. "There will be days when grief catches me unawares, when I'll need to remember and honor what I had with Thomas." August brushed a tear from her cheek. "I wouldn't expect anything less. Our pasts shape us, Clara. Thomas will always be part of who you are, and I respect that." His thumb caressed her cheek. "All I ask is that you make room for me too, in whatever way feels right to you." Clara placed her wedding ring carefully in her pocket, then reached for August's hand again. "I think I already have." As winter descended on Pine Creek, bringing snow and bitter cold, Clara and August's relationship deepened. They spent evenings by her fireplace, reading or talking or simply enjoying each other's company. August continued to work at the Wallace Ranch, but he spent nearly every free moment with Clara. The town gossips had plenty to say about the widow and the cowboy, but Clara found she cared less and less about their opinions. For Christmas, August surprised her with a small silver locket. Inside, he had placed a tiny photograph of Thomas that Clara had saved from the wagon, a gesture that moved her to tears. "So you can keep him close to your heart," August explained as he fastened the chain around her neck, "while making room for new love too." Clara touched the locket reverently. "How did you know this was exactly what I needed?" August's smile was gentle. "Because I know you, Clara Bennett, and I love all of you, your past, your present, and hopefully your future." As spring returned to Wyoming Territory, bringing new growth and possibility, August asked Clara to marry him. The proposal came not with grand gestures or flowery speeches, but with simple honesty as they planted a small garden behind her cottage. "I never thought I'd want to put down roots," he told her, literal dirt on his hands as he dug a hole for a rosebush. "Never thought I'd find someone who made me want to stay in one place, build a life, maybe even a family someday." He looked up at her, squinting against the spring sunshine. "But you've changed all that, Clara. I want all of it with you." Clara, kneeling beside him in the freshly turned earth, felt her heart swell with love for this man who had come into her life when she least expected it. "Are you asking me something, August McCall?" A smile spread across his face. "I suppose I am. Clara Bennett, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Clara leaned forward and kissed him, tasting sunshine and promise. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, I will. They were married in May 1875, almost exactly a year after Clara had first arrived in Pine Creek. The ceremony was small but joyful, held in the town church with the community Clara had come to call her own in attendance. Agnes Miller wept openly, while Robert beamed with paternal pride as he gave Clara away. Clara wore a new dress of pale blue silk, to match your eyes, she told August, and carried wildflowers gathered from the prairie that morning. Around her neck hung the silver locket with Thomas's picture, a tangible reminder that love didn't have to be erased to make room for more. As they spoke their vows, Clara felt a sense of completion, of coming full circle. She had arrived in Pine Creek broken and alone, her dreams shattered by tragedy. Now she stood beside a man who had taught her that the heart could heal, that new dreams could take root and flourish alongside cherished memories. After the ceremony, as they greeted well-wishers outside the church, Clara spotted a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd, an elderly Cherokee man watching with a gentle smile. She recognized him immediately as the medicine man who had helped her in the days after Thomas's death, offering herbs for her grief and wisdom for her journey. She hadn't seen him since that terrible time, had almost convinced herself he had been a figment of her traumatized mind. "August," she whispered, gripping her new husband's arm. "Do you see him? The Cherokee elder." August followed her gaze, but by then the old man had vanished like smoke on the wind. "Who, love?" Clara shook her head, wondering if perhaps she had imagined him after all. "Never mind. It doesn't matter now." That evening, as August carried her over the threshold of their cottage soon to be replaced by a proper house, they planned to build on land they'd purchased together, Clara felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had taken so much from her, but it had given back in unexpected ways. As August set her down and drew her into his arms, Clara looked up into the face of the man who had shown her that love could be found even in the darkest times. "Happy?" he asked, his blue eyes warm with love. Clara touched the locket at her throat, then placed her hand over August's heart. "Yes," she said with absolute certainty. "Completely." 5 years later, Clara sat on the porch of their farmhouse, watching as August taught their 3-year-old son, Thomas August McCall, to ride his first pony. Their daughter, 1-year-old Elizabeth, babbled happily on Clara's lap, reaching chubby hands toward her father and brother. The general store Clara and August had opened in Pine Creek 2 years earlier was thriving, becoming a centerpiece of the growing town. August still helped at the Wallace Ranch occasionally, but most of his time was devoted to their store and their expanding farm. As Clara watched her family, this beautiful, unexpected second chance at happiness, she felt a familiar presence beside her. Though she saw nothing when she turned her head, she somehow knew Thomas was there, approving of the life she had built. "I still miss you," she whispered to the empty space beside her. "I always will, but thank you for sending August to me. Thank you for showing me that the heart can hold more love than we ever imagined possible." A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the cottonwood trees August had planted when they first built the house, "So we'll always have shade in the summer," he'd said, and Clara smiled, taking it as an answer. August looked up then, catching her eye across the yard. His smile still the same one that had first warmed her heart on that desperate day when she'd lost everything spread across his face. With Thomas Jr. Securely seated on the pony, August led them in a circle around the yard, their son's delighted laughter floating on the summer air. Clara held her daughter close, her heart full to bursting with the love she had found when she least expected it with the cowboy who hadn't come to replace, just to love.